if you stop doing the bris and you realize that you didn't actually finish, there's still skins that are necessary to cut off, then you're allowed to go back and finish the bris. But if the skin that you left on is not ma'akiv, it doesn't affect the validity of the circumcision, so then you don't go back. We asked, who's the opinion that holds that you don't go back to do that? Okay. So we suggested that it was the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael ben Eishel Rabbi Yechim ben Breka, that he says that you don't finish skinning an animal on Shabbos, you don't finish skinning the Korban Pesach. So maybe that's a different story. Maybe that's not comparable to finishing the bris. Then we suggested that it was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who says that witnesses don't go to testify if the moon was seen very clear, because the Besdin probably saw the moon themselves. So the Gemara says maybe that's not so. Maybe over here you already started violating the Shabbos. The Gemara now suggests El Amri Nardai. This is where we're starting, 133b in the middle. El Amri Nardai. Rather, Nardai says Rabbanan de Pliyala de Rabbi Yossi. It's actually the opinion of the Rabbanan that argue on Rabbi Yossi, and it's not the same Rabbi Yossi that we mentioned. It's the same person, not the same opinion of Rabbi Yossi that we just mentioned. It's a different Rabbi Yossi. As we had this in Menachas. The Tanana was taught, Arba Kainim Nechnasim. 4 Kainim enter into the Heichal, in the main room in the Beis HaMikdash. Shnayim biyadam shnei sidarim, shnayim biyadam shnei bazichim. 2 of them are holding the bread, a stack of 6 loaves each. And the other 2 are holding the frankincense. Abba makdimun lefneim, but there's 4 other Kainim that go ahead of them. Shnayim lital shnei sidarim. 2 of them are going to take the 2 stacks of bread. Shnayim lital shnei bazichim, and the other 2 are going to take the 2 spoonfuls of frankincense that were there since a week ago. They're going to change the old ones for the new ones. The one that are bringing in the new loaves, they stand on the north. And their faces to the south. And the ones that are taking away the old ones, they're standing on the south and their faces to the north. What's going to happen is, these are pulling and these are pushing in. So they're pulling out the old ones, the other ones, they're basically facing face to face across the table. So they're pulling out the old ones, and the other kainim are pushing in the new loaves of bread. Now they have to do this because it says L'fanai Tamid, that the loaves are in front of Hashem always. So their translation of always, constantly, is literally constantly. That means there can't be a moment when the bread isn't on the table. So as they're taking out the old ones, the new ones are going straight in. Tifchei shel zeh, b'tzad tifchei shel zeh. I guess this person's hand is next to that person's hand. Shem shenem l'fanei tamid. It says in front of Hashem always. Rabbi Yossi says this whole thing isn't necessary. It's not necessary. Tamid, constantly, doesn't mean constantly. It means consistently. That means every week it's there. That means even if you take it off in the morning, you put it back in the afternoon. It was there every day. It doesn't mean constant, 100%. Now, what this is telling me is that according to Rabbi Yossi, when is it considered that you finish the bris? I guess at the end of the day, the whole time you're involved in the bris. Who is the one that holds that if you stop doing the cutting of the bris, you wrap the baby up, let's say, you walk away, everyone goes to have the lox and bagels, whatever. So then it's too late. You can't go back and finish off the little strands that were left that aren't makav. Who holds that? Not Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbi Yossi, you're still involved in the bris. He doesn't hold that that's considered a separation. It's only the Rabbanan that say that constant means constant. And if you take your hand away for a second, because you finish the bris, then you can't go back and cut more. That could only be the Rabbanan, not Rabbi Yossi. In Menachos, this was brought in to discuss what it means to study Torah constantly. We had a discussion over there. you have to study constantly or just consistently. It means a perek in the morning and a perek at night, or if it means you have to study all day. That was the discussion there. Whatever the case is, we have an opinion here for the one that says Pirish, that if you stop doing the bris, then it depends what type of skin tissue you would go back for. Okay, Tarabana was taught in a brisa. Mahalkatin esamila. Mahalkatin, it's different interpretations, but it basically means that you have to collect to remove the hairs, the small pieces of skin that are around that are on the foreskin, that are ma'akiv, that affect the validity of the circumcision. And if he doesn't do that, then there's a karis, punishment of excision. It's cut off from the Jewish people. Very strict punishment. Now the question is, we were very vague here. We didn't say who gets the punishment. So mani, who gets the punishment? Amar Rav Kana Uman. Kana says that we're talking about the mayal. Uman means the craftsman, the expert. The mayal gets the punishment of excision, of karas. Why? Because he did a bris on Shabbos that wasn't valid. So he violated the Shabbos. The Gemara asks the question, 1 second. Ask if Rav Papa asked the question. Uman, leimalahu, ana avdi palga the mitzvah. I get it, the bris wasn't valid. But what he cut was acceptable. He was beginning the bris. He was totally allowed to do what he was doing. He stopped short. But what he did was allowed. He was doing a circumcision which is allowed on Shabbos. He says, I did half the mitzvah. Atunavdisu palka the mitzvah. Let the father, someone else, finish the mitzvah. He did part of it. Why does he get the karas? Because he violated Shabbos. He didn't violate Shabbos. He started the mitzvah. Someone else will finish it. Elam Rav Papa rejects this pshat. Who gets karas? The mayal? No. Papa doesn't like that. Papa says, gadol. We're not talking about on Shabbos. We're talking about a regular weekday bris. But we're not talking about the child. We're talking about the bris on an adult. And what we're saying is that the adult doesn't have a real circumcision, so he gets karas. Karas is if a person doesn't have a bris, he gets that punishment of excision. Maskefla Ravashi has a question. Gadol behedik sivbe. What do you mean? Someone doesn't have a bris. That's a pasuk. It says, Aral zachar shela yimal. If a male, uncircumcised male, didn't have his bris, it says v'nichrasa. It says that he gets excision. But I need a brisa to repeat a pasuk. Something's funny over here. We're saying that if you didn't take off those extra pieces of skin, there's karas. So we don't know who it's on the male or on the child. The child it can't be, because the child doesn't get punished. It must be an adult. An adult I have a pasuk for. So what is this talking about? Elam Ravashi leilamuman. Ravashi has a new pshat. It says back to the male. The male's getting punished over here. Why is he getting this punishment? He did half a bris. So the answer is to Shabbos. He shows up late. The male shows up late. He shows up. It's bein hashmashas. Shabbos is just about over. You don't have enough time to do the bris. It's varmalu. No, I can handle it. I can do the bris quickly. It'll be fine. And he starts the bris, but he doesn't actually finish it. He ends up that he did an incision on Shabbos without doing the mitzvah. Now, if it was earlier, then someone else would finish it. The mitzvah would be done. But he did it so late that he wasn't able to finish it, and so therefore it's just an incision without the mitzvah, so the male gets karas. It's karas of Shabbos. Rashi is concerned over here. Why doesn't he get much more than karas? Rashi says he doesn't get the death penalty, because they didn't warn him, and he didn't accept it. That penalty would be, I'm doing it anyway. He was saying, I'm not doing it. I think I'm going to be able to do it. But nevertheless, there's still kares. He didn't really start with permission. Shabbos doesn't get pushed off for half a bris. That's the issue here. Okay. Now it says in the Mishnah, we had a list of things that a bris is, that you're allowed to do on Shabbos. One of the things was moitzitzin, which means to use suction to take the blood. The blood should flow through the wound. That was part of the healing. The suction was usually with the mouth. To use the mouth to use the moil sucks on the blood to make it bleed. Omar of Papa. Papa says, "Hay umna de mayetz." If there is a moil that doesn't do this, doesn't suction the blood, sakanahu, it's dangerous. Vavrina lay, and he loses his job. Gemara says, "Pshita, of course." The Mishnah says, "Midakam machal shabbata sakanahu." If you can be machal Shabbos to do this, then obviously it's dangerous. The Gemara says, no, it's not necessarily so. Ma'al d'teima, I could have thought differently. Haidam nifkad pocket. The fact that I'm allowed to do the metzitza, the suction on Shabbos, that's because it's not really making a wound. It's not making the blood flow. The blood was there anyway. It's mifkad pocket. Mifkad pocket this is a similar term that's used if you're allowed to have the first relations with a girl on Shabbos, if a person gets married Friday night. Is the blood of the basulim, of the virginity, is that blood held there? It's contained in that skin, or is the blood because there's a wound that the blood is now flowing out? Is it like held inside just as a container, or is there a wound? So here also we're asking that maybe we could have thought that the blood was just held by the foreskin. And the fact that you pull it out, that's not making a new wound, that the blood is flowing through the body and it's coming out. It was just contained over there and it's coming out, but that's not really a chil Shabbos. Kamash Malon, what the chiddush over here is that chiburi mechaber, no, it is a real chil Shabbos, but you have to do it anyway. It's a real chil Shabbos. The blood is coming because it's like the blood of a wound that is starting to flow. It's coming from the whole body of the blood is rushing towards this area. And it's similar to the malachas that you put on the bandage, you put on the cumin, which was also part of the healing. Just like Esplanus, the bandages, the medicinal bandages, and the kumain, the cumin, which was also for this poultice that was put on. If you don't do it, it's a sakana. So afachinami, also the metzitza, if you don't do it, it's a sakana. In other words, the fact that you do it on Shabbos is not because it's not a real chil Shabbos. The fact that you do it on Shabbos is because it is a chil Shabbos, but it's a sakana. You have to do it anyway, even though it's a violation. Okay. The 4 lines from the bottom. Put on it this bandage. It's a medicinal bandage. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Amrli aim. My mother told me, it's not really his mother. It's his stepmother, his wet nurse. Because Abaya's parents died when he was very young. His father died before he was born. His mother died right after his birth. The Rashi Tevis Abaya is Asher B'cha Yerucham Yasem. He was an orphan. Gemara says Abaya never violated the laws of Kibbud Avim because he didn't have parents. So his mother, this nurse that raised him, had a lot of advice. And Abaya would quote her. We'll see on the next page a bunch of quotes from. It says, "Ispalanas tekulu kivi." The medicinal bandages for all types of pains. Shave mine tarba v'chadakira. 7, it's a ratio of 7 to 1. 7 is fat and one is wax. That's what you put on this bandage. Rav Amar Kira v'kalba rishina. Rava says that it's really wax and a sort of sap, a white sap that comes from a tree. What's it called? There's a part of the wax that's medicinal, that's antiseptic. I forget what it is. One part of the wax that the people use. I forget what it's called. Okay, Darsha Rava b'Mechusa. Rava taught in Mechusa. That was the city that he lived. Karinu b'nei Menyume asa lemanayo. Rava gave away the secret. Now it happened to be that b'nei Menyume were doctors, and they would make the herbalists, I guess. They would make these potions for people. Now Rava just told everyone how to make it. He gave away this as a home recipe. So why do they have to go to the doctor anymore? Everyone knows how to do this at home. So the secret of Coca-Cola, right? So he gave it away. So so they tore their clothing. These doctors, these B'nai Menyumi, tore their clothing. Amalu, Rava says to them, I left you one recipe that no one knows. He tells it to us. He doesn't tell it to the city. Shmuel says, someone washes his face. He doesn't dry it well. He gets some sort of boils on his skin. What should he do for that? Limshi tuva b'maya de silka. You should wash it with beet water, and that will help the boils go away. So Rava was telling the Bnei Menyumi that you still have one medicine that people don't know about until they read this Gemara. So they still have the job. Okay. If you didn't, yeah.
Starting with Motzitzin, is this a traditional analysis of medicine on Shabbat? Or is this still something special?
You mean, does this apply to other wounds?
No, starting with Motzitzin, which is done for the benefit of sakana to the child. Is this a traditional analysis of the use of medical practices on Shabbat?
If it's a sakana, then you're allowed to do whatever it takes. Here we're saying that that the metzitza itself is so important that it could save the life. So that's why you're allowed to do it, yeah.
So it's not really something special about Mila. It occurs because of the Mila, but it's a traditional analysis. That's what I'm asking. Yeah,
the analysis of what you're allowed to do. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not an excuse because of it's not excused because of the mitzvah. It's excused because of the sakana. That's what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, because it's after the bris. Oh, I see. Oh, you have an interesting question. Is it a part of the bris? That's what you're asking. Is it a part of the bris? I assume that the Gemara is not doing that. You're asking a good question. Is this a chelik of the mitzvah that overrides Shabbos? Or is this a sakana that overrides Shabbos? If there was no blood, then it would be a chelik of the mitzvah. But I think even if there was blood, you still do it. Even if it was already bleeding, you still do it. So it must be the sakana. I think that's the pshat.
Okay. You. By the way, it's only a good question if Yitzi says it is.
Every question is a good question. I didn't.
It's a good question.
I didn't realize the depth of it when I first started answering. Okay.
It's a good question.
Okay, Taner Rabbanan. Let's start in a brayse. Dvarim shein eisen l'mila b'Shabbos eisen l'b'Yom Tov. Okay, on Shabbos there's more restrictions of chayla than on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, it's more lenient. So things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, you're allowed to do on Yom Tov. Sheikhel Kamoin, you're allowed to grind the cumin. Why would you be allowed to grind the cumin on Yom Tov? Well, because you're allowed to make food preparations, and cumin could be used in food. So you can grind it, and it looks like you have an excuse because it's for the kitchen. It's not for the medicine cabinet. The tarfin la yain v'shemen, you're allowed to mix the wine and oil together. Amalei Abaya, the Rav Yosef. Abaya says to Rav Yosef, "Ma'ishna k'mein b'Yom Tov." Why are you allowed to do the k'mein, the cumin on Yom Tov? The chazi l'ktera, because there's an excuse that using it for food. Yain v'shemen nami chazi b'Shabbos l'chayla. I can prove it to you that wine and oil I'm allowed to apply to even a sick person that's ein by sakana, even if there's something that's not dangerous on Shabbos. Now, if I can do it on Shabbos, to even a person that's not dangerously ill, then I should be allowed to do it for a bris as well. Why can't I mix the wine and oil for a bris on Shabbos? If I have another reason to do it on Yom Tov, I'm allowed to do it on Yom Tov. On Shabbos, I have another reason to do it for a non-dangerously ill sick person, so I can do it for the bris as well. Because, of course, the same category, at least the same category. Why can't he mix that? The Tanya, he's going to prove this. It's a brisa that says, "Ein tarfin yain v'shemen l'chayla b'Shabbos." You're not allowed to mix wine and oil together on Shabbos. No, it's a medicine. We don't make medicines on Shabbos. There's a concern you might grind herbs. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar Mishum Reb Meir. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Reb Meir. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is a student of Reb Meir. He says, "Af tarfin yain v'shemen." You are allowed to mix wine and oil. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, "Pamachas chash Reb Meir b'meyav." One time, Reb Meir had a stomachache. We asked, "Do you want us to mix the wine and the oil?" He didn't let us do that. We said to him, "Your own opinion is going to be nullified in your own lifetime. Means you're not even going to follow your opinion. You hold that it's allowed." Amar Lano, he said, even though I hold that it's allowed, my friends hold that it's not allowed, I would never have such chutzpah to go against my friends. Even though I hold that it's allowed, but out of respect for my friends, I don't do that. So who knew the machmar nafshay? That was his own opinion, that he wanted to follow his friends. He didn't want to be more lenient. But that must mean that for everyone else, it would be permissible. Now, our issue over here is that if Reb Meir holds that it's really allowed, he himself doesn't do it, but he holds that that's the din, that it's allowed. So, Stam Mishnah is Reb Meir. Our Mishnah should allow it. Why did our Mishnah say that if you didn't mix the yayin v'shemen, you're not allowed to mix it on Shabbos? Reb Meir holds you're allowed to. I think the reason why Reb Meir holds that you're allowed to is because that you could be excused that it's a food. So therefore, you're allowed, even a chayla she'ein by sakana is allowed to do it. So if you have an excuse that it's a food on Shabbos, that it's not medicine, there's no malacha there, you're just taking a spoon and mixing wine and oil, that you're allowed to do. And so therefore you're allowed, even a chayla she'ein by sakana is allowed to take it. So why can't you mix it for a bris? That's the question. Abaya is asking Rabbi Yosef. The Gemara answers, Hasam le'bay lika. Over there, he said it's allowed because you didn't need to actually mix it. It looks like leka, it's lika, mixing. Hacha by lika, but over here you have to mix it. So he asks, well, why don't you put it on without mixing it? So the Gemara answers, that's exactly what the Mishnah says, that you put it on without mixing it. The Ran over here is concerned, what was the Havamina? The Mishnah says that you'd put it on without mixing it. So he says that the Havamina was that you put it on the wound without mixing it. You put it on, you apply each one individually. The Gemara's answer is that you put them in a plate and you apply it together, but you just don't mix it. So there's a step over there that wasn't so clear. The Gemara says no. When it says zebef neatzmai, doesn't mean that you have to apply them separately to the wound. It means you put them in the plate together, but you don't mix it, and that's considered zebef neatzmai. There's a brisa that teaches ein misanes achardal b'misanene shalei. I don't know exactly how this looks, but apparently there's some sort of strainer to strain mustard. I don't know if it's straining it dry or straining it wet. I'm not sure exactly how it works. What we're learning here is that you're not allowed to put mustard into a strainer. You're not allowed to strain the mustard on Shabbos. Apparently, if you would put a hot coal mix it in, this hot coal into the mustard, it would sweeten the mustard, like toast it a little bit, and then it would get sweeter. You're not allowed to do that either. Why? Because you're extinguishing the coal when you move it around. But we have a brisa that says you're allowed to put an egg through a strainer. I don't know what you're straining, but it says you're allowed to put the egg through a mustard strainer. Why are you allowed to do that? You're not allowed to put the mustard into the strainer. So Rabbi Yosef responds, when you're finished with the egg in the strainer, there's nothing left on the top, so it doesn't look like you separated. But over here with the mustard, you still have some pieces that are left on the top of the strainer on the other side. And so you took out the bad part. So that's considered bayra, that's selecting. It says you're not allowed to sweeten it with a coal. You put the coal in to like toast it. We have another brisa that says exactly the opposite. You are allowed to put a coal into it. It says like kasha. It depends what type of coal. If it's a hot metal, then it's allowed. If it's a coal from wood, then it's not allowed. Now, the difference between the wood and the metal is that when it comes to the malacha of extinguishing, the real malacha of extinguishing a fire is to make coal. So that's only by wood, where you make the coal. It's a derabanan to extinguish the metal. But because of, is this on Yom Tif? Because of this is on Yom Tif. This is on Yom Tif. Because of Simchas Yom Tif, you're allowed to do this with metal to sweeten the mustard. Yeah, otherwise on Shabbos you would have other issues. So on Yom Tif, you're allowed to do this with metal to sweeten the mustard. But you're not allowed to just plain extinguish a coal on Yom Tif. Amalei Abayler of Yosef Maishn Bisra Gumri. If there's a problem of extinguishing wood, coals on Yom Tif, so why are you allowed to throw a piece of meat on top of the coals to make a barbecue? It extinguishes, it drips, it extinguishes the fire. Afterwards it flares up, whatever, but it's still extinguishing. Why are you allowed to do that? Okay. When it comes to the sweetening the mustard, you could have done that yesterday. You don't have to do that today. And because you could have done it yesterday, we don't allow you to do it. But when it comes to a fresh piece of meat, yesterday's steak doesn't taste as good as today's. So that's why we allow you to do it on Yom. In other words, for Simchas Yom Tif, you're allowed to do whatever the malachas are, and this is a malacha. You're allowed to do this for Simchas Yom Tif. even though it's mechaba. Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef Ma'ala Gabin. Abai asks his teacher, Rav Yosef, what about making cheese? The problem of cheese we mentioned before was probably baina. It's you have to take the cheese and take the pieces and push them together. It's building. It's similar to building. Amalei Aser. He says you're not allowed to make cheese on Yom Tov. Maishna Bilisha. Then why are you allowed to knead a dough? You're allowed to make bread on Yom Tov. Amalei Hasam Le'efsher. Hach. Making cheese you could have done yesterday. And there's no difference yesterday's cheese and today's cheese. It doesn't taste better today. But fresh bread, today's bread is much better than yesterday's. But one second. But in Nardai they said that fresh cheese is good. Sounds like it's better to have fresh cheese. It means you should be allowed to make it on Yom Tov. He says, no, that's not what they meant. Not that fresh cheese is better. It's fresh cheese is good, but of course yesterday's cheese is better. Aged cheese is better. So it's better if you made it yesterday. So therefore you're not allowed to make cheese, but you're allowed to make bread and you're allowed to roast meat on Yom Tov. We also learned you're allowed to strain the egg, but you're not allowed to strain the mustard. Okay. So I mentioned how to sweeten the mustard. Okay. Okay. The following Gemara has a bunch of bandages issues with for the circumcision. I didn't get exactly I know what the issue is. We're going to be discussing using a bandage that could actually cause harm because threads from the bandage could get caught inside the healing tissue. And then when you pull it out, it could cut the baby. So, and that's a concern of Krishafcha. If it cuts too far, it could cut through the urethra, and it would could cause more harm. Okay. You're not supposed to make this bandage on Shabbos. Chaluk would be like a glove, sort of, that would fit right over the organ. Abaya says, my mother told me, remember the mother, this is the wet nurse. She said that when you make this bandage, this the glove that covers over the bris, the circumcision, you have to make sure that you put the seam on the top. It means you turn it inside out. And that means so the hairs, it's possible that a hair could get caught and get stuck to the healing tissue. And when you take it out, it could cause krushavcha, is a castration. And could mutilate the organ. Abaya's mother, apparently, she was a professional wet nurse. They would bring babies to her after the circumcision to I guess, I don't know, bandage or something. And she would make a lining halfway down to cover the area that was cut. Amar Abaya, Abaya said, as the lining was, I guess, to protect from the seam of the glove. So there was an extra cloth in there, probably like a gauze or something, that doesn't have hairs that come out to protect from that. Abaya says this child that doesn't have a proper bandage, Lesi Belisa, you take a rag, this Sifsa that has a hem, you bend up the hem on the bottom, and you fold it over on the top as well. I'm not sure exactly what exactly you're doing. Whatever the case is, I understand that the point is that to make sure that the pieces that could come off from the bottom or from the top should not get caught in this healing tissue. Amar Bayamli Aim. Abaya says, my mother told me, the wet nurse, it's not clear where the anus is. There's something that's something is unclear. It's the way that some defect, the way the baby was born. You can't tell where it is, where the hole is for the excrement to come out. What do you do? So the shayfi mishcha, you put on an oil. You put them in the sun. One part of this, the oil is going to look clearer than the rest. The rest of the oil is on the body. There's going to be one part that has some give, I guess, and the oil over there will catch a little more. That part where it's clear, likari besarta shesi ve'erev. You make a cut with the sharp edge of a barley seed. You make a cut both ways, an X. But you don't do it with metal because that could cause swelling, which means that could cause infection. Abai says, my mother told me, if there's a baby that doesn't nurse, make her ducker pume, it's because his mouth is cold. Maybe it doesn't allow him to suck. So he's too chilly. So my takanti, what should you do? Let's say kasa gumri. Take a cup of coals. Valinka teladi pume, and you put it close to his mouth. The chayim, it warms the chayim pume yomayitz. His mouth will warm up. He'll be able to move it better. To put the mouth over the breast to nurse. Amar Abai Amar Li'em Hayanuka D'Lei Menashte. Abaya says, my mother told me, the wet nurse, if there's a child, two interpretations here. Either that's not breathing, or that's not urinating. Linfefe benafasa. You blow him with a fan. Umanashte, then he'll either start to breathe or start to urinate. Whatever the interpretation is, those are two different readings of Manashte. On the side, if you notice, they have the two. Amar Abai Amar Li'em. Abaya says, my mother told me, Hayanuka D'Lei Ma'abe. There's a child that's not breathing. Lesus Lisa. You take the afterbirth, the ime of the mother, and you rub it over him. Ma'abe, and he'll start to breathe. Amar Abai Amar Li'em. Abaya says, my mother told me, Hayanuka D'Katan, if there's a child that's too thin, Lesu Lesilta D'ime. You take the afterbirth, the placenta of the mother, and you put it over him, you rub it over him. Apparently one side of it is more narrow, the other side is wider. So you start from the narrow side and you rub it on him as I guess you get over to the wide side. So that's like showing that he goes from small to bigger because he's too thin. But if the child is overweight, he's fat. Then you do it the opposite way. You take it from the wide side and you rub it over him to the small side. Amar Abai Amar Li'em. Abaya says, my mother told me, Hayanuka the sumak, if there's a child that's too red, that means that the blood didn't get absorbed into the body. He was just born and the circulation isn't good. So, litarchu lay. You have to wait for him. You can't do the circumcision yet. You have to wait till the blood gets absorbed. And then you can do the circumcision. The yarak, let's say he's jaundice. That means also that the blood isn't circulating properly. Yeah. So you wait again until the blood goes inside, until the blood gets absorbed, and then you do the circumcision. I don't know what it means, Leinafel Beidame. I don't know. Okay, I guess he doesn't have the skin complexion. That must be what it means. He looks yellow. That's what it means, that the blood isn't functioning. it's not functioning properly. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Amar Rab Nassan says, one time went to the islands. A woman came to me. The first child, she did a circumcision on, and the child died. Sheni v'mes, the second child, did a circumcision, and he died. Shlishi aviyas, the third one they brought to me, Risa Shuedim, saw that he was red. Skin was red. Wait, don't do the bris on the 8th day. Wait until the blood gets absorbed. She did the circumcision afterwards, after she waited, and the child lived. By Yakarnas in Nasana Bavli al Shmi. They called him Nasana Bavli because he saved the life. Went to this country, Kaputkia. I think that was that resort, that vacation place. The woman came, first two children had died. Shlishi, the third one, she brought. I saw that he was jaundiced. I looked at him, I didn't see that there was blood on the area of the circumcision. You have to wait until the blood comes. She waited, and she did the circumcision, and he lived. They called him Nasana Bavli after me. So, very interesting, Naphtali. Rashi over here says that the concern over here was that there wasn't any blood by the bris. That means they were going to do a cut, and there wasn't going to be blood coming out. So Rashi, the second to bottom line, he says tarti legriyusa. There's two problems here. There needs to be blood by the circumcision. And Va'oid, Rashi says the Mesukanu, there's also a danger. There's two issues here. Circumcision won't be correct, and also that there's a danger. Very interesting. Yeah, they make a big deal about this, a certain instrument that they use that doesn't allow blood to flow. I forget what it's called. But it was not halachically acceptable. A clamp, that's what they used. It was called a clamp. They use a guard that leaves space so the blood should still flow, but not the clamp that would squeeze it too tight. It wouldn't allow the blood. Okay, Marchitzin Esakatan, we have a new Mishnah. We're on top of 134. It says you can wash the child on the day of the bris. Before the bris and after the bris. Talking about hot water. Now the Mishnah says, "Mezalfen alav biyad." You sprinkle the water on him by hand. The Gemara is going to be concerned over here. First, he said you wash him. Now you say you sprinkle. What? The Gemara is going to explain that this is actually an explanation. What does it mean? There'll be two interpretations over here. What does it mean that you're allowed to wash him? It doesn't mean you're mamash allowed to wash him. It means you're allowed to sprinkle water. It doesn't mean that you're allowed to sprinkle with the utensil. It means you're allowed to sprinkle water with your hand. The Mishnah gets limited as you read it. The permissibility here just gets restricted. Avaloi bekele, but you can't use a utensil. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he says, "Marchitzin asakatan b'yem hashlishi chalis b'Shabbos." Allowed to wash the baby on the third day normally. Shneim Ravi b'yem hashlishi b'yesem kayvim. He puts a pasuk by Shechem on the third day. They were in pain. The people of Shechem after the bris. What does that tell us? It tells us that that's a day where there's danger on the third day. He says that you're allowed to wash on the third day as well, and normally. The Tanakhama didn't say anything about the third day. Tanakhama didn't even hold the allowed to wash it normally. It's a double machlekes. Yeah.
Just once, it took me a moment to put, that's the Gomco clamp you were talking about. That's a picture behind me.
Oh.
It's Because when I was an intern, that's what we used in the hospital on the going. It's just you turn the tight, it stops the blood flow, and then the shield is
Right.
there, and you just do the circumcision. Halachically, it wasn't allowed. So.
Right.
Please get to your pictures faster so they're more comfortable.
Well, I didn't have that one prepared. All right. Bye.
Okay. Suffix, the next case. If there's a suffix, a doubt, that means that the baby was born in the 8th month of pregnancy. It means we don't know if he's going to live. There's other explanations for this as well. A suffix could also mean that you're not sure if it's correct to be done on Shabbos. Maybe it was born bein hashmashas. Yeah, a woman told us that whenever she was giving birth, so if it was bein hashmashas, her husband, very religious man, would say, wait, don't wait until after the 18 minutes or whatever, you're going to make shilas for Shabbos or whatever. Okay, shilas for the bris. Okay, androgynous. Androgynous is someone that has both signs of a male and a female. It's called the hermaphrodite. That's a combination of Hermes and Aphroditus, was the male and female. That's how they got that name, the Greek. Here, androgynous, I think, is also an English word. Ein mechal navas Shabbos. You can't do it, even though he has a male organ, but he can't do the bris on Shabbos. We'll see why. The Gemara is going to learn it out. Rabbi Yehuda matir b'androgynous. Rabbi Yehuda learns from a pasuk that no, you are allowed to do the bris for an androgynous on Shabbos. Okay, the Gemara starts off explaining the first part of the Mishnah. It starts off saying marchitzin esakatan, and then it says mezalfen. Then it says that you sprinkle it. Barmatresh marchitzin. What do you mean you sprinkle it? It says you're allowed to wash him. That means you could bathe him. Put him in the warm water. You heat the water. You put him in. Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Baravua d'Amitar Vayu. Rabbi Yehuda is a student of Rav, and Rabbi Baravua, I think it's a student of Shmuel or Rav also. They both say Ketzad Tani. The Mishnah is explaining. It's saying, how do you wash? It says, how do you wash the child before and after? It's on Shabbos. You sprinkle the water, but you don't use a utensil. That's the explanation. Amar Rava. Rava says, V'marchitzin katani. What kind of explanation is that? It says you're allowed to wash, and then you tell me you're not allowed to wash. If it wanted to say what you do, it should have said, Mizalfin esakatan. That you're allowed to sprinkle on the child. Elam Rava Chibtani. Rava says, no, there has to be that you're allowed to wash the child. This is what it's teaching. If it's on the day of the circumcision, you're allowed to wash before and afterwards normally. But let's say the bris was done on Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, the third day is on Shabbos. So that's also a day of danger. What do you do then? So then, Tanakama holds that on the third day, then you have to sprinkle it with the hand, the warm water with the hand, but you don't use a vessel. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds no, on the third day you're also allowed to. On the third day, they were in pain. What does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah hold about the first 2 days? It sounds like for sure. If on the third day you're allowed to, for sure the first 2 days. That would make sense. Tanakama holds the first day, yes. What do they hold about the second day? Nothing. You're not allowed to do anything on the second day. And the third day, again, there's a sakana. You're allowed to, talking about if those days fall on Shabbos, then you'll be allowed to be mizalef according to Rava. Tanya Kavasei de Rav, we actually have a brisa that supports Rava's interpretation rather than the interpretation of Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Baravua. Rabbi Baravua was the father-in-law of Rav Nachman. says you're allowed to wash, mamish, the child. There's a brisa that says this. You're allowed to wash the child on the first day, before the circumcision, after the circumcision. Normally, you don't have to do the sprinkling. If the third day is on Shabbos, you're allowed to sprinkle the water with your hand. Okay, Rabbi ben Azariah says you're allowed to wash on the third day normally. That's the machlekes. Regarding the first day, there's no machlekes. Everyone holds you're allowed to wash normally. The machlekes is about the third day. It's machlekes on the second day, probably. They would say nothing, the Tanakama. And Rabbi ben Azariah probably holds, yes, but we don't have a proof what Rabbi ben Azariah holds on the third day. Even though we don't have real proof that you're allowed to wash the baby normally on the third day, but we do have a zeichel adav, we have a hint that says by Shem said that on the third day they were in pain. Okay, now we go back to discuss mezalfin. This is the opinion of the Tanakama. When you do the ziluf, it means the sprinkling of the water to wash the wound, to wash the baby, possibly, we'll see soon. Then you'd use your hand, you sprinkle with your hand. Also in the Tanakama, the Gemara explains that that's going according to the Tanakama, because according to Rabbi ben Azariah, you never needed to sprinkle water. You were always allowed to bathe the baby. What do we mean when we say that there's no proof? There's just a hint. Mishum de Godel Salak Bisra Hey, Katan Salak Bisra Hey. Those people that had the bris, that on the third day they were in pain, that they were all adults. They were the people of Shechem, and maybe they don't heal as quickly as a child heals. Child heals much faster. So maybe by the adults on the third day they were in pain. Maybe by a baby that's 8 days old on the third day, it's not the same sakana. It's already healed on the first day and a half. How do you know the same thing applies? It's not a good raya. You have no raya that on a baby, the third day is a sakana, because by an adult, the third day is a sakana. A baby heals quicker. Could be the sakana's over already. So it's still a zeichel adavar. It's still just a hint. It's not a real proof. Someone came to Rava. Is he allowed to wash the baby on the first day normally, or maybe on? He said yes. That was the way Rava learned this. Ichlish Rava. Rava got sick. And he says he must have gotten sick because he paskined against Rav Yehuda and Rabba Bar Avua. He paskined against them. They said that on the first day you're only allowed to sprinkle water. You're not allowed to actually bathe the baby. He held that the Mishnah says you're allowed to bathe. So Rava gets sick after he paskins this way. Omar, he says, Anabahadi Targamina Desavi Lamali. Why do I have to mix into the opinions of those elders? Should not be mixing in. Shouldn't have paskin like that. Amalei Rabbanan L'Rava, but the students said to Rava, Atani Kava say Damar, but there's a brisa that supports you. Why are you afraid to paskin? It's not even you. There's a brisa that precedes you. Amalei Masnisan Kavasayo Dayaka. The Mishnah actually, that brisa actually supports them. It's more precise like them. Why? Mimai. How can you say that? It says clearly on the first day the Tanakh holds you allowed to wash. It says me the Rabbi ben Azariah marchitz nesakatan b'yemashlish chalias b'Shabbos. The fact that Rabbi ben Azariah says that you're allowed to wash the baby on the third day that falls on Shabbos. You see, if the Tanakama would hold that you're allowed to be mezalef the whole time, the first day and the third day, it's just to sprinkle. Rabbi ben Azariah says, no, you're allowed to wash. The machlekes is, if you're allowed to sprinkle, you're allowed to wash. But if you learn like me, Tanakama holds you're allowed to wash, you're allowed to bathe the baby on the first day normally. You're allowed to sprinkle on the third day. So when it says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you're allowed to wash, af marchitzin mibayla should say you're also allowed to wash. Also on the third day you can wash. Tanakama said on the first day you can wash. They hold, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds even on the third day you could wash. It sort of said even wash. But if you say that the Tanakama never said anything about washing, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says no, you're allowed to wash. In other words, we have a problem with the wording that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that alludes to the fact that Rava's interpretation of the Tanakama is not correct. Really, the Tanakama never mentioned anything about washing. That's what Rav is saying now. Kiyasar Abdimi, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Abdimi came, he says the name of Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Elazar ben Padas. He's the Amira in Eretz Yisrael that became a Chavrus of Rabbi Yochanan at the end. He said Rav Dimi was the traveler, so he brings from Eretz Yisrael, from Rabbi Elazar, he says Halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Halacha is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that has this more lenient opinion. It says that you're allowed to wash it even on the third day. Okay, heavy bab in Marava. In Marava, they deliberated on this. They discussed, what does it mean? Hachatzas kol gufei hachatzas mila. Doesn't mean you're allowed to wash the body. It doesn't mean you're allowed to wash the circumcision. So this one student said, Rabbi Yaakov Shmei, his name is Rabbi Yaakov, Mistabra chatzas kol gufei. It probably means the whole body. Because if you say it means the circumcision, migara mechamen al gabi maka, is this any worse than putting a hot water on the wound? Rav says, Ein meinen, you don't withhold chamen v'shemen al gabi maka b'Shabbos. You're allowed to put hot water on the wound. So the wound you're always allowed to put it on. It must mean that you're allowed to wash the whole body. Maskefla Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, 1 second. You don't see a difference? You're allowed to put water, hot water. It doesn't mean you're allowed to heat the water. Here you're saying that you're allowed to heat the water. You're allowed to put hot water. That means the water was heated already before. So you really have no raya that when it says that you're allowed to wash the baby, that it's talking about washing the whole body. What we mean is that you're allowed to heat water to wash the wound. Doesn't mean you're allowed to wash the whole body. Just because you're allowed to wash the wound on Shabbos anyway, that could mean from water that was heated before Shabbos. How do you know? Maybe the Machlekes Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is not even talking about hot water, water that was heated on Shabbos. Shabbos, there's still a Machlekes. Are you allowed to wash the body or the wound with the water that was heated with in a chainik, in the hot water urn that was placed before Shabbos, and water's still hot? Amar Abaya says, "Ano boi the ishni lei b'kadam ishani lei Rabbi Yosef." I wanted to answer this. I was about to answer, but Rabbi Yosef beat me to it. Rabbi Yosef gave the answer. Rabbi Yosef is the teacher. Let him speak first. It says because it's a danger. So if that's the pshat, that it's because it's a danger, then obviously we're talking about heating the water on Shabbos. And Rashi over here says that the first 2 days you're allowed to use the hot water. Tanakama holds the first 2 days you're allowed to use that. That was not clear to us what the Tanakama held about the second day, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. But Rashi so holds that you're allowed, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you're allowed to heat the water the first 2 days, according to the Tanakama as well. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah adds the third day. That's a chiddush from Rashi. Okay. Itmanami was also stated, when Ravin came, he said the name of Rabbi Vo and the name of Rabbi Elazar. And some say it was Rabbi Vo and the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Allah is like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Bein b'cham shuchim b'Shabbos, bein cham shuchim b'erev Shabbos. You're allowed to use the water that was heated today. You're allowed to use the water that was heated yesterday. Bein achatzas kol gufay, bein achatzas samila, p'nishas hakanei. You're allowed to wash the wound. You're allowed to wash the whole body because of the danger. Gufa. Okay, it was taught before. Amar Rav. Rav says, "In meinacham b'shemen al gabi amaka b'Shabbos." You don't withhold hot water or oil from the wound on Shabbos. Shmuel Amar Noisin chutz l'maka v'sheis v'yid l'maka. Shmuel says differently. Did we learn this before? It's interesting that it's saying gufa. I don't know. Okay, Shmuel has a strict opinion. He says that you're not allowed to put the oil or the hot water directly on the wound. He says you have to put it above the wound and then you let it drip down into the wound. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. It says you're not allowed to put the water onto a bandage or the oil onto a bandage to put it on a wound on Shabbos. It's kasha on Rav. Gemara says Hashem Mishum Schita. It's not a kasha on Rav. But they're using a bandage. You're not allowed to make the bandage wet. You might squeeze it out. Toshima Einesin Cham V'Shem Al Gabi Moich Shal Gabi Makah B'Shabbos. Another raya. It says you're not allowed to put the water onto a moich is a cloth. Now I'll put it onto a cloth on Shabbos. So Hasam Mishum Schita, that's not a problem. That's an issue of squeezing, which that's a problem on Shabbos. Tani Kavasei the Shmuel was taught a brayso according to Shmuel. Very clear. You have to put it above the wound and then let it drip into the wound. Otherwise, it's medicine on Shabbos. Of course, we're dealing with the wound. It's not sakana, but we don't want to do medicine because of the other issues. You might end up grinding. When you put the water or the oil on another area of the body, it's not clear that you're doing medicine. Looks like you're washing or something. You're allowed to put oil on, except if it's rose oil, we said, right? You're allowed to put a dry cloth over a wound, a dry sponge. But not a dry reed, but not dry cloths. What do you mean? You just said you're allowed to put dry cloths. You said moich yavish is a dry cloth. Now it says ksisin, which is another type of cloth. It says you're not allowed. So it's like kasha. It's not a problem. It depends. If the cloth was used before, then you're allowed to use it because it doesn't heal. It only heals if it's a new cloth. So apparently the cloth itself, I guess, they would heal. But if it's an old cloth, it doesn't heal. So that's why it's not clear. If it's an old cloth, it's not clear that you're doing it for medicinal purposes. From this, you see one thing, that haniktis and masu, that new cloths heal. Okay, suffik vandroginus. If there's a doubt, if this child should be circumcised, then you don't do it on Shabbos. And then androgynous, we said, was a machlekes. We didn't explain the machlekes. It's machlekes Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda if you're allowed to circumcise an androgynous, which is the hermaphrodite, on Shabbos. It was taught in a brayso lasai or lasai vadai, the Shabbos, when it says that you cut the foreskin or lasai, it means specifically if it's a vadai, if it's definitely supposed to be done. The pasuk concludes by Yom Hashmini. So teaches me that you do that even on Shabbos, but it needs to be Arlasai, his foreskin. That means that's a miyut. That's restricting it to only if it's a vaday. But if it's a doubt, then you can't do the bris on Shabbos. We gave 2 examples of the doubt. Maybe it's bein hashmashas, maybe it was the 8th month. It says it needs to be definitely a foreskin, but not an androgynous. Not you can't do that bris on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer androgynous teichas Shabbos v'anas kares. Rabbi Yehuda says, we'll explain what this means, that an androgynous needs to have a bris and it's done on Shabbos, and there's a kares punishment. What does he mean by that? I guess if he doesn't have a bris. Or lasei vadi dech Shabbos v'lein neilid bein hashmashas dech Shabbos. It continues. If he was born bein hashmashas, then you can't do the circumcision on Shabbos because it may not be the right day. It's a question which day it is. Or lasei vadi dech Shabbos v'lein neilid kshumal dech Shabbos. It's possible for a child to be born without a foreskin. So, when you do the circumcision on Shabbos, so a child without a foreskin doesn't have a circumcision. What do? You let the blood, you just take a drop of blood. You don't do that on Shabbos. Because Bishamai holds, Bishamai holds you have to let a drop of blood. Beisil holds you don't have to. Surprising, right? Where do we get this idea that you have to let a drop of blood if that's Bishamai's opinion? We'll see in a moment. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, the Machlekes Bisham and Bisil wasn't about a baby that was born mal. Baby was born circumcised, then you definitely need a little bit of blood. He was never circumcised. And it could be, it's called the Orla Kavusha. It could be that the foreskin is just held in, it's like hidden. So when you let a drop of blood, that's considered like it's removed. The foreskin is hidden there. So alman nechlekus. What's the machlekes b'sham b'sil? Al gershin eskayir kshumal. See, a convert that was circumcised already before. Rashi gives an example. Maybe it was an Arab. So he was circumcised, and then he wants to convert. So he had a real circumcision. So that's a machlekes. B'sham yom tzarich latem adam bris. B'sham says the circumcision that he had when he was an Arab, that's not a bris. Basil says no, he was circumcised already. So that's machlekes b'sham Basil, but definitely a baby needs to have a drop of blood. Okay, Amar Mar, the master taught for Leisafik, Deiches Shabbos. If it's a doubt, it doesn't push up Shabbos Lasuyimai. You just listed all of the possibilities. Bein hashmashas. What else could it be including? It says Lasuya the Tanur Rabbanus, including what was taught in the Brisa, Ben Shiva Mechalan of Shabbos, Ben Chasin Mechalan of Shabbos. If a child is born in his 7th month, so we assume he's going to live. There's such a type of thing that it's a 7-month pregnancy. He's a regular child, and you violate the Shabbos to do the circumcision. Safek Ben Zayin, if he's an 8th month pregnancy, then you don't do the circumcision because that's assumed that he won't make it. Safek ben Zayin, Safek ben Ches. Let's say it's a doubt. Ein mechal nabas Shabbos. You can't do the circumcision on Shabbos. That's how they had it in those days. A child that was an 8th month pregnancy, it was assumed that he was going to die. Ben Shmeina Hariyok Evan Vasalataltlei. You can't even move him. So what do you do? The mother has to bend over and nurse him while he's laying down. You can't move the baby on Shabbos. Very strict laws. Itmar. Rav Amar Halacha Tanakama. Rav says the halacha is like the Tanakama. Tanakama said that there's a machlekes Beishami and Beis Hillel about a noiled mal. If a child is born with a bris, that Beis Hillel holds, you don't have to do anything. That's what Rav says. Shmuel Amar Halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Shmuel says halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar that a noiled mal, you do. Everyone agrees you have to do it. You have to let a drop of blood. The whole machlekes Beisham Beis Hillel is only about a ger. Rav Ada Barav is Yallehu Yinuk Shumal. Rav Ada Barav had a baby. It was a child. It was born, and he had a circumcision already. A Hadri Atleis Amali was Shabbos. He ran around 13 milim to get them to do the bris. No one wanted to do it. Everyone was saying that they paskin like Rav, that says that he doesn't need a circumcision. Rav Barava held like Shmuel, that he does need a circumcision. So he ended up doing the bris himself, and he didn't know what he was doing. And he ended up cutting too much. The child became mutilated. The Khrushchevka cut too far. Amar Teseli Davri Rav. He says, I deserved it. I violated the halachas of Rav. Rav said that he doesn't need it. Amalei Rav Nachman Vad Shmuel Ayavar. He's saying that he violated Rav. He violated Shmuel also, even though Shmuel says he needs a bris. Shmuel B'chal. Shmuel never said that you do the bris on Shabbos. Shmuel said he needs a bris, but maybe that's only in the weekday. Rav Barava violated both. Shabbos miyamar, did he say that you do the bris on Shabbos? Who savar vadi orla kvushi? He held that it was definitely that the orla is there. The itmar, because we have a statement. Rabba Machashin Shamar Lakushi, Rav Yosef Amar vadi orla kvushi, and he was following Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says that there's definite orla, and therefore the bris is done as a vadai, as a definite bris, not as a suffix. I'm Rav Yosef. We just finished till the two dots. How do I know that it's definitely Arla Kvusha? The Tanya was taught in the Brisa Rabbi Lazar Kappa Reimer. Rabbi Lazar Kappa says, There's no machlekes b'sham b'sil on a baby that was born without a foreskin that you have to let a drop of blood. What is the machlekes? L'chal lavas Shabbos. If you're allowed to do the drop of blood on Shabbos, that's the machlekes. Bishama and Bisil. We didn't have this before. We had the machlekes about a ger. Bishama, you're mechal of Shabbos. Bishama says that you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. Bisil, I'm mechal of Shabbos. Bisil holds that you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Lav mechlal, the Tanakama Savra mechal of Shabbos. This opinion says, Rabbi Lazar Kapper says that there's a machlekes Bishama Bisil if you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. That means the first opinion, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, held that you're allowed to do it on Shabbos according to everyone. How do you know that they held that you're allowed to? Maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe they held that you're not allowed to. Rabbi Lazar Kapper says that there's a machlekes. So that tells me that the first opinion holds that there's no machlekes. But what they hold, we don't know. Maybe everyone holds yes, maybe everyone holds no. Where it says, Im Kain, Rabbi Lazar Kapper, time of the Bishama Yasalas Minan. If Rabbi Lazar Kapper is coming to say that there's a machlekes about this, and the first opinion holds that everyone holds that you're not allowed to, then the only thing that Rabbi Lazar Kapper is doing is adding to us the opinion of Beishamai. That's what he's coming to tell me, Beishamai. The whole Rabbi Lazar Kapper is just to add one opinion that says you're allowed, which is not accepted. So Dilma Hachikamer, maybe what it means to say is that he's coming to say that there's no machlekes b'shama and b'silal, that you're not allowed to do the bris. That they were arguing on the weekday, if it's necessary, and he comes along and says that that you're not allowed to do the bris on Shabbos. Everyone agrees that you're not allowed to do the bris on Shabbos. One second, I don't know if I said that correctly. Give me 1 second. He explains. Rabbi Lazar Kapper is telling the Tanakama that on Shabbos everyone holds that you're not allowed to do the bris. The machlekes b'sham and b'silal is if what the Tanakama hold, that you're not allowed to do the bris on Shabbos. Everyone agrees. The machlekes is if you have to do it on the weekday. Says it's not so. If you have to do it even on the weekday. That in the weekday, even Beis Hillel holds that you have to do the bris. And the machlekes is about Shabbos. So they're telling us what Blazer Kappa is saying is that according to the Tanakama, there was a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about the weekday. And according to Rabbi Lazar Kapper, that in the weekday there's no machlekes. Everyone agrees that you have to. On Shabbos, there's no machlekes. Okay.